I had a session recently and I want to bring some of the themes and the good stuff from that to you today. So, this is a person that I've been working with for some period of time, about 3 months. And we had a really good conversation as he's trying to process this sense of confusion and reaching for some clarity on why did my symptoms show up when they did. And essentially, he's saying, I don't get it. I've lived my entire life free from this. And then on this one particular day, a couple of years ago, he has this, during this seemingly mundane event in his day, he gets a panic attack. And from that point forward, now essentially has symptoms of anxiety and pervasive kind of generalized anxiety and panic attacks that he feels plagued with. And just has an incredible amount of confusion on why would something so seemingly mundane lead me to this kind of reaction. And so as he starts working with me, I ask at the onset, do you have any trauma history? He says no. The further we get, it's clear, boom, 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 clear trauma history, right? But that level of this I see very often when you ask it in that kind of forthright way, do you have a trauma history? I feel like just from my clinical experience, 90% of people who do have a trauma history will say no to you. And there's a variety of different reasons to that. I think a lot of it has to do with just this kind of dissonance and this dissociative effect that happens when we have trauma in our own lives. Um, Also, sometimes like just the self protection and alignment and protection with family of origin. So people can have a little bit of a feeling of, I am engaging in betrayal if I recognize what I experienced with this person who was a primary caregiver who I love and have an immense amount of respect and beauty and reciprocity in my relationship with them at this point in time. That there's something that feels competing or in conflict with being able to hold space and duality for both of those two things. So this is a conversation that I have with a lot of different people. Is just really being able to recognize, be self-honoring, label something for what it is, just for the sake of our own congruence, healing, removing that dissonance, and knowing, coming to an understanding of this history and the symptomology, and allowing yourself to feel and honor the gravity of what that is for you does not need to be considered a threat to your standing in your current relationship with this person that you love who is a part of that situation in the past. So actually, I wasn't planning to talk about that. It's a little bit of a tangent, but important. So we'll leave it in there. I'm going to pull back into his understanding. So he's saying to me, I don't have a trauma history. And then we discover, like, you have a clear trauma history. And so we're rolling with doing this work. So we already recognize that, and we've had those conversations in some of the first couple of sessions. But one of the last ones, he comes in, he's still kind of bringing this up and grappling with, it seems so odd to me that it hit when it did instead of earlier, like why that particular time. And so we had a beautiful conversation about survival skills versus superpowers. And let me explain that a little bit more. This includes a lot of inner child work. So I am asking him, think about when you're this 5-year-old little boy going through what you went through. What is it that you held, that you believed, that you said to yourself, that you lived into, that allowed you to get to the place in your life that you've arrived at, being an entrepreneur, owning his own business, successful, all the things. This is an accomplished self-made man, right? So as he is answering that question, he says, well, I think when I was young, I did have this thought in my head that I told myself I deserve the best and I'm going to get that. I'm not going to stop until I have that. Right? Getting chills as I say that. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, okay. So you had this beautiful belief that has allowed you to be resilient, to get to where you are at this point in your life, and you have a lot to show for that. It's the hustle and grind, right? He has, and this is like a primary piece of his survival skills. I'm going to get the best, which I don't have now, and I feel that and I see that around me, right? And I deserve that, and I'm going to prove that. So I'm going to get the best. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to grind. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get there, and I'm not going to stop until I do. This man has been busy. He's been busy, doing the things, getting to the finish line. Now he reaches this point in his life where he has, looking around, right? He's got what he considers to be the best of the best, which is what he had said and that he was going to set out for when he was a child going through that trauma. And so we had this realization of, while it feels to you when you look at it from a more limited chronological standpoint that is not as trauma informed, that this just hit out of nowhere, what is going on the deepest soul-based spiritual level, plus with integration of the understanding of the psychology background to it that I just kind of explained there, we can see this is the perfect time because you have arrived at the man that little boy set out to become. Whew. Powerful. You have become that man. You're there. And so to him, he is thinking, well, why once I get there, do I then feel plagued by these symptoms of anxiety? And so I'm explaining, because you now are the exact man that inner child who is 5. Let me think of how I want to say that. You have become the version, the man that inner child, the perfect like there's no better person to go back to heal that little boy than who you are right now. I'm going to think of a different way to say that right now because I feel like that got a little sloppy. I have now become the man that this 5-year-old child needed. Time to turn inward. I am his savior. I am his protector. I am his healer. It couldn't be anybody else. And there's no better man for that job. So as we come to this realization that he has now accomplished, for the most part, what he set out to accomplish, that he had committed himself to out of that trauma when he was 5 years old. I'm going to get the best. I'm going to improve my worthiness. I'm going to not stop until I do. Now that he's got this empire set up around him and he's got safety, security, stability, all of the things in his external environment, he has enough safety, security, stability established for his inner child to say, time for the spotlight to come to me, because you have now arrived at the epitome of the future version of this man who is now the perfect person to go back in time to heal and attend to and to rescue. I want to say something different than rescue. I can't think of another word there. That inner child, right? This inner child of this 5-year-old boy who has these wounds, they were never healed. You just developed incredible survival skills and resilience to push through, right? And beautiful. Honor those survival skills, man. Look at where it got you. This is amazing. And that's a beautiful sentiment to be able to have that sense of, I deserve the best. I'm not going to stop till I get it. Hustle and grind, right? He's gotten to this point in his life. However, now that he's crossed that finish line, he no longer needs that survival skill. So the tension of that survival skill continuing to exist in direct connection, I was going to say correlation, but in direct connection to his worthiness. My worthiness equals how much am I hustling and grinding here to be able to prove to my inner child that we're good, right? He doesn't have to hustle and grind as much right now. He's got safety and stability wrapped all around him in the lifestyle that he's created for himself. And so while that feels incongruent to him on a certain level of why, when I'm at the point in my life where things feel good around me externally, right, where I have these accomplishments to show for, where I have like a beautiful, loving, supportive wife with me, why now am I starting to feel this nervous system activation that is rocking me? Now is the perfect time because you've arrived at the man that this little child needed. So when you think spiritually and from a soulful level of, what do I want to say here? Like almost stretching time or recognizing that the dimension of time is a very 3D element, what we're really doing here is taking the arrival of you in the sea of this resilient man who has established safety and security for himself. It's now safe for the inner child to be heard. And so we're hearing it. That's that nervous system activation. Hey, I'm ready to have you give me some attention. And that deep level of healing and validation and protection is coming not from me. It's coming from from the adult version, this established, powerful, resonant version of who he is now. That version is ready to provide all of these things to the inner child. And this is the work that I'm helping him do here, not he is doing. He was in tears. I had chills, and he came back the next week and said, when I was sharing this with my wife, she was in tears. It was beautiful. And so from this story, what I'm hoping that is, rises to the top for you to be able to see the theme and the kind of bold underline this message is, when you look back at your life and you think about what have been the things that have given me the greatest success in life, what are the things I think are the biggest pieces of my resilience and my accomplishments, the things I can stand on and feel some steady ground in. Often the answer to that may very likely be, that is survival skill. That is the thing you were able to grab on to feel a sense of control and stability. And okay, here's something that I know gives me a pretty solid equation. 1 + 1 = 2. When I do this, I get this outcome, right? To be able to survive. And when we shift it into thriving, what we're doing is holding space to recognize the very fact of the origins of that. that contribute to that reality that it indeed was a survival skill. And then once we have that validation and awareness, we do that healing work, that inner child work, that soul level kind of work to be able to detach our sense of worthiness from the survival skill, right? And once you do that, and so what I mean by that is when this person is not in hustle and grind mode, there's an instability with the deep sense of worthiness because the worthiness was not unconditional and deeply rooted in a spiritual sense, right? It had conditions to it. When I hustle and grind, I feel worthy. And so when I'm not having to do as much of that, symptoms kick up. So we're detaching the sense of direct connection of the worthiness from the survival skill when we do that healing work. When I'm relaxed and I'm on vacation and I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor and the hard work that I've done through those years of hustle and grind, I feel deeply worthy across all conditions, unconditionally worthy from the seat of my soul and the depth of who I know I am on an eternal level, right? And you don't lose, he's not going to lose his work ethic and his hustle and grind. But what's going to happen to that is it's going to transform once the worthiness is detached from it, from a survival skill into a superpower. I don't need to do that to feel worthy. And I know I'm more than capable of hustling and grinding anytime I want to because it's a strength that I have that won't leave me. It's a superpower at this point. It's not going to control me. I pick and choose when I'm going to hustle and grind, right? And it is in no way attached to a deep sense of my soul based, unmovable worthiness that stays with me across all contexts and all conditions and phases of my life.